Welcome, Professor Kesri Lal Verma, Vice Chancellor of Pandit Ravi Shankar University, Raipur. Welcome, sir. Thanks for joining here from the session. Namaskar. And we also have with us Professor Bharat Bhaskar, who is the Director of IIM Raipur. Thanks for joining, sir. Welcome. And we have Priyanka Tripathi, who is the Principal of Krishna Public School, Raipur. Welcome, Priyanka ji. Namaskar.
Welcome, sir. Namaskar to all of you.
Thank you. And we have Shailaditya Ghosh, who is the Director Principal of NH Goel Ward School, Raipur. Mr. Ghosh, thanks for joining. And I think Kalpana Singh will join soon here. And let me also welcome our moderator, Siddharth Chaturvedi, who is the Executive Vice President, ISET Group of Universities. So the topic of this session is that bridging the digital and economic divide in education and NEP 2020 perspective. So we are going to talk about NEP, and we have a mixed panel of school education and higher education here, and both the government universities and the private universities also here. So I think it will be a diverse set of speakers are here. So let me hand over the session to Siddharth to take it over. Siddharth.
Thank you, Raviji, and I welcome once again to all the esteemed panelists for this very important session. And to my mind, this is probably the most important session, not just for this event, but this topic is probably the most important topic which has been brought into prominence because of the recent pandemic, and it has also laid bare the harsh realities of the digital and the socio-economic divide when we consider something as basic as access to quality education. So I welcome all the panelists, and I also welcome all the attendees. It is pertinent to note that only today NCERT has released in its survey that 27% or more learners don't have an access to learning device like a mobile or a laptop at home. And more than 28% learners also face electricity, a lack of continuous electricity as a major hindrance to access of quality education. So with this backdrop, the context of today's discussion is exactly this, the very difficult and sort of uncomfortable question of how do we reach every learner with quality education, leveraging the digital infrastructure. I will recommend and I will request all the panelists to view today's topic through three lenses. The first lens is, of course, the COVID pandemic and the short-term, medium-term, and the long-term response with which all of us have given in our individual capacity, and which now going forward we would like to expect out of our own teachers and institutions and probably from the policy makers. The second lens inevitably, of course, is the new education policy, which lays a long-term roadmap for a lot of revamps in the school education sector, higher education sector, and it talks very highly of leveraging digital infrastructure to ensure access to all the learners. And the third lens is we are focusing on Chhattisgarh as the state of our subject today. And it becomes more pertinent because we have a lot of students coming from backward areas, from underprivileged classes in the state of Chhattisgarh. So this topic becomes all the more important. So these are the three lenses. And the fourth thing which I would like to bring about through this session is, apart from all the generic information which probably all of us know already, specific innovations, specific interventions, specific best practices which have been leveraged in your respective institutions. If you can talk about that will be a very good learning for all the attendees as to how we are all trying to face this problem in our own individual capacity. So I would like to begin by, first of all, congratulating our entire education ecosystem for showing the kind of resilience and the response each and every teacher, trainer, education leader has actually stepped up to this challenge which the pandemic has thrown in front of us and has responded in our own capacity. So to that extent, the credit goes to us. But now we are staring at a more long-term kind of a challenge, and we have to devise a long-term calibrated response to this entire challenge. So we have a very esteemed panel today, and as Raviji said, a good mix of the government institutions and the private school leaders who are here. We will try and keep the responses a little brief because we have a lot of ground to cover in almost 1 hour. So let me straight away begin by inviting Professor Keshri Lal Verma ji, Vice Chancellor of Pandit Ravi Shankar University from Chhattisgarh. Sir, we would like to know, since your university caters to a large base of underprivileged students also, what has your response been in the last 5 months, and how do you see the situation improving in the coming months, and what do you think the long-term impact of NEP would be in ensuring and challenging, ensuring the access to the rural students through digital means? Sir. Sir, kindly unmute your mic. Yes, sir.
धन्यवाद सिद्धार्थ। स्कूल लीडरशिप समिट के इस सत्र के सभी साथियों, नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी घोषित करने के बाद लगातार हम विभिन्न प्लेटफॉर्म पर इसकी चर्चा कर रहे हैं और जो बातें स्कूली एजुकेशन से लेकर हाई एजुकेशन तक की गई है उसके विभिन्न पक्षों पर हमें इस रूप में विचार करना है कि उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कैसे हो। अभी विषय यह बताया जा रहा है कि हम कोविड-19 के प्रभाव से कैसे प्रभावित रहे शिक्षा जगत के लोग और उस स्थिति में हम क्या करें और क्या कर रहे हैं। जहां तक राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति की बात है उसमें बहुत सारी बातें प्राइमरी एजुकेशन से लेकर हाई एजुकेशन तक की गई है, वो कुछ नई भी है, कुछ ऐसी बातें भी है जिसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन किसी न किसी रूप में हो रहा था, उसे अब नए परिप्रेक्ष्य में देखना होगा। वस्तुतः ज्ञान के परिदृश्य में पूरा विश्व तेजी से परिवर्तित हो रहा है, इस दौर से हम गुजर रहे हैं और दूसरी तरफ पूरा विश्व प्रभावित है कोविड-19 महामारी से। पहले भी क्लासरूम टीचिंग के अलावा हम बच्चों को प्रेरित करते थे कि वो ऑनलाइन जो मटेरियल उपलब्ध हैं ई पाठशाला के रूप में, और MHRD ने समय जिसे हम आज शिक्षा मंत्रालय कहेंगे उसमें बहुत सारी सामग्री दी गई, UGC ने भी सारी सामग्री दी। MOOCs के अंतर्गत हम लोगों ने अपने शिक्षकों को वर्कशॉप के माध्यम से जागरूक किया, लेकिन वह गति नहीं बन पाई। बार बार प्रयास किया गया शिक्षा मंत्रालय से कि लोग इससे जुड़े, हमारे विद्यार्थी इसका लाभ लें, हजारों कार्यक्रम जो तैयार हैं उसका लाभ जन जन तक पहुंचे। लेकिन कोविड-19 के प्रभाव के कारण जब क्लासरूम टीचिंग संभव नहीं हो सका, तब हमने अपने शिक्षकों के माध्यम से बच्चों को प्रेरित किया कि वे इससे जुड़ें और उसकी पढ़ाई हो। इस दौरान जो शिक्षक इसमें प्रशिक्षित नहीं थे, उन्होंने भी प्रयास किया और धीरे धीरे ऐसी स्थिति बनती गई कि यथासंभव हमारे टीचर्स हमारे विद्यार्थियों को कोर्स कंप्लीट कराने के लिए प्रयास करते रहे। उसमें सफलता भी काफ़ी मिली। लेकिन जैसा हम सब जानते हैं कि छत्तीसगढ़ की स्थिति कुछ अलग है। हर विद्यार्थी के पास स्मार्ट मोबाइल, लैपटॉप या डेस्कटॉप नहीं है। इंटरनेट की कनेक्टिविटी की समस्या, बहुत सारी ऐसी समस्याएं हैं जिससे पूरी तरह हमारे विद्यार्थी नहीं जुड़ पा रहे। ये स्थितियां बहुत आगे तक रहेगी, ये हम मानते हैं। हमारा जो एजुकेशन का जो टारगेट रहा और जो हमारी एक्टिविटीज रही वो दो दिशाओं में रही। पहली तो ये कि हम GR को बढ़ाएं। 18% है ये छत्तीसगढ़ के लिए, बार बार कहा जाता है। राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर 26। राष्ट्रीय एजुकेशन पॉलिसी पर भी यह जोर दिया गया है कि इसमें वृद्धि हो और 2035 तक हम 50% पहुंच जाएं। स्कूली एजुकेशन के लिए तो कहा गया कि हम 100% में रहें। इसलिए ऐसा प्रयास कि दूर दराज के क्षेत्र के विद्यार्थी भी हायर एजुकेशन में आए, उसका लाभ लें। और राज्य शासन ने भी प्रयास किए कि दूर दराज में कॉलेज खोले गए, अधिक से अधिक एडमिशन हो और हम पढ़ाई करवा सकें, ये स्थिति थी। दूसरी तरफ हम क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की चर्चा करते हैं, हम शिक्षा में गुणवत्ता लाना चाहते हैं। इसलिए आवश्यक है कि हम ऐसी एक्टिविटीज में हमारे सभी विद्यार्थियों को सम्मिलित करें, जो कि क्लासरूम टीचिंग के साथ साथ जो डिजिटल माध्यम से हम उसकी पढ़ाई करवा सकें, उनकी ज्ञान की जो प्राप्ति के जो साधन है उसको उपलब्ध करा सकें। कठिनाई आई, जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं कि हमारा विश्वविद्यालय नेक के द्वारा A ग्रेड प्राप्त है। NIIF में अभी जो ग्रेडिंग हुई है 100 से 150 के रेंज में जो हमारा विश्वविद्यालय है। इस प्रकार से हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि छत्तीसगढ़ के विद्यार्थियों को क्वालिटी एजुकेशन मिले। हमारे जो विद्यार्थी हैं जो एग्जाम में अपीयर होते हैं साल में, वो 2.25 लाख हैं। इसलिए हमको चिंता होती है उन दूर दराज के विद्यार्थियों को जो कुछ सुविधाओं से वंचित हैं, डिप्राइव्ड हैं। हमारे लिए सभी महत्वपूर्ण हैं विद्यार्थी। इसलिए ऐसा प्रयास निरंतर रहता है कि हम सबको समान शिक्षा दे सकें, गुणवत्तापूर्ण शिक्षा दे सकें। इसके लिए जरूरी होता है कि राज्य शासन का सहयोग मिलता रहे। इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और टीचर की व्यवस्था तो गवर्नमेंट कॉलेजेस में शासन के द्वारा होती है, लेकिन प्राइवेट एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन भी हैं, कॉलेजेस भी हैं। उनसे भी हम अपेक्षा करते हैं कि टीचर की भर्ती में क्वालिटी को देखें, पढ़ाई समय पर हो, अटेंडेंस भरपूर हो। और इस दौर में हमने यह काम भी किया कि एडमिशन से लेकर NAD में डिग्री डालने तक सब कुछ ऑनलाइन हो जाए। एंड टू एंड कहा गया उसको। हमारा पूरा कार्य विगत 2 वर्षों से कंप्लीट ऑनलाइन है। पूरा एडमिशन सेंट्रलाइज्ड है। विश्वविद्यालय तमाम 141 महाविद्यालयों के एडमिशन हर विद्यार्थी का करवाता है, उसके लिए सुविधा उपलब्ध कराता है महाविद्यालयों को, और इसके माध्यम से बच्चे सीखते हैं कि हम ऑनलाइन कैसे एडमिशन के लिए अप्लाई करें, उसी के माध्यम से एनरोलमेंट करते हैं हम। आगे एग्जाम के लिए जो फॉर्म भरना होता है उसको भी हम कहते हैं कि ऑनलाइन करें। रिजल्ट की पूरी प्रक्रिया ऑनलाइन है। OMR शीट हम शीट तैयार करके रखते हैं, इस आंसर बुक में पहले से ही देते हैं ताकि हम प्रोसेसिंग कर सकें और समय पर रिजल्ट निकाल सके। कंप्लीट ऑनलाइन करने के लिए हमारी प्रक्रिया थी कंप्लीट है।
राइट।
2.25 लाख स्टूडेंट्स की कापियां 11-12 लाख होती है, उन सबको प्रोसेसिंग समय पे करना और रिजल्ट निकालना, और इसके साथ साथ बच्चे एजुकेटेड हों, जाने उस प्रक्रिया से वाकिफ हों, और ऑनलाइन पद्धति से जब जुड़ेंगे और NAD में अपनी डिग्री को जब देखेंगे तो पता चलेगा कि हाँ हमको ये सुविधाएं इस प्रकार से मिल रही। पिछले दिनों
जी सर,
राज्य शासन ने पूछा कि क्या परीक्षाएं ऑनलाइन हो सकती है। हमने समस्याएं बताई और परिस्थितियों को बताया। वस्तु स्थिति यह है कि हमारे पूरे विद्यार्थी ऑनलाइन से एग्जाम देने के लिए सक्षम अभी नहीं हैं, सुविधाएं नहीं हैं, हमारे पास इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ऐसा नहीं है। आखिर ये कमी जो दिख रही हमें उसको कहीं न कहीं पूरा करना। जब हम ऑनलाइन एग्जाम नहीं करवा पा रहे हैं, इसका मतलब हम ऑनलाइन पढ़ाई भी पूरी तरह नहीं करवा पा रहे हैं, जो कि हमारी इच्छा है। बार बार इस नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में कहा गया है कि हम सर्वांगीण विकास के लिए हमारे विद्यार्थियों को समान रूप से शिक्षा उपलब्ध करा सकें।
जी जी सर, मैं आपको इंटरप्ट कर रहा हूँ बीच में। मैं एक बार इनिशियल रिमार्क्स के तौर पे बाकी जो हमारे पैनलिस्ट हैं उनके भी रिमार्क्स एक बार ले लेना चाह रहा था, एंड आई विल कम बैक
बोल के मैं
जी
कम है, मैं समझ रहा हूँ। केवल मैं कुछ बातें बहुत शॉर्ट में कहना चाहता हूँ, संक्षेप में। इन सब चीजों के लिए कहीं न कहीं फंड की जरूरत होती है।
राइट।
राज्य शासन के सहयोग की जरूरत होती, क्योंकि शिक्षा समवर्ती सूची में है। केवल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी बना देने से काम नहीं चल सकता, इम्प्लीमेंट करना सबसे महत्वपूर्ण होता है। पॉलिसी बनी, लोगों ने विचार किए, बहुत लोगों विद्वानों के विचार आए, और भी पॉलिसी के और भी तरीके हो सकते थे। बना बहुत अच्छा है, हम कह सकते हैं, लोगों के विचार के आधार पर बना है। लेकिन प्रमुख बात है उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना, उसका क्रियान्वयन करना, और हम सभी शिक्षण संस्थाओं से जुड़े लोगों से यही अपेक्षा भी रहेगी कि हम उसको सही ढंग से इम्प्लीमेंट करें, समय पर इम्प्लीमेंट करें, तभी उसका लाभ जन जन तक पहुंचेगा, तब उसका लाभ समाज को मिलेगा, तब हम उस कह सकते हैं कि हाँ इस माध्यम से हम समाज निर्माण में हमारा योगदान हो रहा है। इसलिए अभी हमारी चर्चा होती रहेगी, इसमें बहुत सारे मुद्दे हैं, बहुत सारी बातें की जा सकती है। हम भी चाहेंगे सब अपने विचार व्यक्त करें, उस पर डिस्कस करें, तो कुछ अच्छी बातें सामने आएगी।
राइट,
धन्यवाद।
राइट, थैंक यू सर। और एक एग्जाम्पल आपके पूरे एक्सपीरियंस से ये देखने को मिला कि एक लार्ज स्केल इंस्टीट्यूशन जो कि इतने बड़े स्टूडेंट पॉपुलेशन को केटर कर रहा है, वहाँ पे भी कई लेवल पे टेक्नोलॉजी चेंजेस और अपग्रेडेशन देखने को मिले हैं। हालांकि द जर्नी इज नॉट येट कंप्लीट एंड वी हैव अ लॉन्ग वे टू कवर। I'll quickly turn to Professor Bharat Bhaskar from IIM Raipur. Sir, I don't want to repeat this entire question, so maybe if we can have your thoughts on this, but I do want to add one more perspective from NEP that, you know, now going forward, we are looking at the multidisciplinary approach, and IIMs and IITs will also turn into a multidisciplinary institution. So what are your thoughts on that? And in addition, your thoughts on the main core subject which we are discussing right now, sir.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think you had four main themes or questions on which you wanted to focus, but in the interest of time, I'll focus more on NEP and the question you just posed to me right now. And rather than COVID and what is the current crisis, because that's a temporary scenario and there are patchwork solutions, and of course there are challenges associated with that. But what is fundamentally important is what we see in front of us, how we reorganize, what we understand of a new education policy. I think lots of it has been talked about. Most of the people who are connected on today's forum are already aware that few key challenges or changes which are happening in education policy is what Dr. K.C. Verma talked about, Sarvangeen Vikas. Based upon the good development of a good human being, also making him useful for the society, not by pursuing the direction that parents wanted to be engineer, doctor, etc. A few successful things which they are, few successful streams, and forcing them in those streams. So the issue which you talked about is the new education, especially higher education, has the biggest challenge in front of it. I'll come to digital and economic challenges later. But the first and foremost, how we recalibrate our thinking. Because we have been ordained into one kind of a thinking that discipline is a discipline, departments are compartments. And we only think in terms of our compartment, not in terms of what is a complete human being needed for society, where the interest of that student or person are. Now, multidisciplinary education forces you to make that change where a student, I don't want to call him a customer, but a student is a driver according to the interest, and they're going to get a degree. Of course, I'll not talk about diploma and a certificate and 3-year and 4-year. That's all well laid out in the education policy. But fundamental change which we have to make at a higher educational institutions, whichever we are, that how we restructure our syllabus. And one of the aspects, then you cannot have a forced syllabus that BCom, whatever, has a following syllabus. Structure is exactly same. Right now, AICTE, for example, forces model syllabus for all kind of degrees. That has to disappear because the whole policy is devoid of that. I can be really a multidisciplinary person thinking of understanding at a bachelor's level, physics and philosophy, and maybe something other related subject which are related to physics, and also broaden my thinking because my interest is not in chemistry. When I take that interest, the chemistry as a subject, it forces me down into something which doesn't let me rise to my fullest potential. So that's one of the positive aspects. But the challenging aspect is how do we deliver? The planning goes completely haywire because you take in a BSc PCM stream, certain students, BSc Physics honors, certain students, and your planning, number of teachers, everything is driven from that top-down perspective. At higher education institution, now we have to worry about how do we do this kind of a plan, right? And that's the biggest change, which will be not pushed very next year, but slowly and gradually, we have to begin to move towards that change. And that's one of the biggest challenges you're going to face. That how we reclassify and begin to reclassify maybe in the baskets. And here are the baskets in which person will be. The admissions based upon the assessments will come in and the person will be free to then pursue whichever side they want to go. Which means as a faculty or various departments or various disciplines, we also have to be attractive enough to attract those people because there are two factors which attract the students in certain aspects. One is, of course, the job profile, future, etc. and so on. Other is the student-teacher connect, meaning I am interested in those subjects, but if I know I have ended up this university and those subjects are not really, the teachers are not able to excite me. And that aspect also has to change. So teachers have to be also exciting in their discipline. They have to bring that knowledge where students feel excited in the class, because they have a choice. I'm a student of physics. I may not take physics courses that much. I may take other related courses and still be able to graduate. So those are the structural changes which has to come in. I can keep talking about, but in the interest of time, I'll not get into greater detail of that. The financing and of all this restructuring is going to be a big challenge. The other challenge as a higher education institution will face, and the wonderful part is, for first time, government is putting private and public education system at an equal pedestal at a higher education level. There's only standard setting bodies. UGC is a grant giving body, but it's not supposed to discriminate. I should not use the word discriminate, but right now UGC is meant for a state and central government, central universities. Private sector can get some kind of a funding, very limited proportion of it. They're talking about the fund. This is a funding model which will be more competence based, number of student based, creativity based, innovation based, etc. and so on. So putting them on that kind of a pedestal, it gives opportunity for private sector also to rise, and whoever does the better of the two, or better of all for the whole education, is not this versus that. The whole education system then can thrive. The one who are able to make changes faster, adopt to new policy faster, will be able to grab this financing much faster. Of course, this requires much bigger financing. School education, I'm sure there are enough speakers, so they will talk about. School education require even much larger financing in order to implement the NEP, the current policy, because lots of structural changes are required there as well, which were probably 6% budget which government is talking about. If in essence, in reality, it's given, probably may suffice. But many a time, although it has been promised or expected in NEP, how much of that state and central government will be able to do is one of the greatest challenge which we are going to face. The last thing I wanted to talk on that, we need to understand also that the going to be multidisciplinary universities in which there'll be, some of them are going to be research oriented, some are going to be teaching oriented. For research oriented, again, we can't rely on the government giving us grant automatically. The National Research Funding Agency will come up, which will also is an advantage, yes, because right now you run to DSIR, AICT, n number of bodies for fundings. All that funding will be channelized to a single agency, and that will be professionally managed by, my expectation is, by the academicians and scientists themselves, not by the bureaucracy. Advantage of that will be that if you're doing good research, you put your proposals, you will get lots and lots of fundings, and then universities, research universities have to compete. How much innovative research they're able to do, good for the country, good for the university. That's the one who have a capability to thrive will thrive. One who are thriving based upon only the government driven funding will have a tough challenge. So that is the biggest thing. IIT, IIMs is the last, less than about a minute I'll take about IIT and IIMs. IITs are already becoming multidisciplinary. Many of you may have noticed or not noticed, IIT Kharagpur has a school of economics, a school of law, and a school of medical sciences already in there. So the policy was coming in, and prior to that, all these people were preparing. IIT Kanpur has a school of economics, I think a school of intellectual property, which is more of a half-law school, because intellectual property is everything related to law. And many other IITs have similarly added various other disciplines. IIT Delhi has added lots of disciplines related to rural economy, rural engineering, etc., and so on. So many of them are already planned out and panned out in those areas. So they are better placed. Now, very specialized institutes like IIMs face a different kind of challenge. Now,
yes,
good part is this policy is silent on master's level education. It's only focused on undergraduate education. So as of now, we are not into undergraduate education, because the moment we get classified as an undergraduate institute, we have to immediately have a multidisciplinary approach in that as well. But most of the IIMs have been thinking. Few IIMs have already started bachelor's and they call it a generic Bachelor's of Arts program. So there's a BA program in one or two IIMs. Other I've been thinking, and they may get launched and multi-departments may come in, because we are multidisciplinary to start with. We have a department of economics. We don't call them, we call them area of economics, because we call it only a one management big department. So area of economics, area of social sciences, area of psychology, which you call organizational behavior. We name it slightly differently. And area of finance. So all these IT, operations management, which is industrial engineering, are all there, but they all have to be groomed, restructured, and maybe some programs which are masters in specialized economics, masters in social sciences, masters in psychology, etc., have to be launched. We are thinking it through. I don't have a clear-cut view that this is what direction we'll take, but yes, in long term, we have a slight window in front of us, but we probably after 5 years will see IIMs also becoming a multidisciplinary but related discipline institutions.
Okay.
With this, I will leave the floor for my colleagues.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, the multidisciplinary aspect of NEP was one definite thing which we wanted to bring in. And let me bring in the school leaders now into our discussion, and I'll turn to Priyanka Tripathi ji. So we've all seen that teachers have been quite at the forefront for the last 5 months, and some of them also probably would have gone through a rude shock of readapting overnight, and instead of classrooms sitting in front of the screen and continuing the engagement of students with learning. Coupled with that, the NEP also focuses teachers as the core delivery arms of this education, and also talks a lot about teacher training and professional and continuous development of teachers for improving the quality. So I would ask you, what has the experience been at Krishna School, and what are your plans to work in alignment with the NEP objectives?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, overnight we have to change because of the pandemic. Overnight, every teacher was supposed to be digitally, aware and literate, and a lot of training process went on, onboarding the students, and there was a big challenge for us as well for the government too, because we were knowing there were a lot of digital platforms available already. So still the switching over altogether to the digital platform was a challenge for the school, especially where we have to connect from nursery child to class 12 child. So it was a great challenge for us. But yes, trying with all the platforms, they were already there, but there were a lot of problems connected to it in the beginning, because if you talk about the availability of internet, electricity, yes, there were some parts electricity was not available. The students who have gone to the village, they don't have the electricity till now in few of the areas, but the connectivity was the biggest challenge we face. And even if the parents are having the mobiles with them, the students will not have the access of those devices. So taking into all this consideration, we were looking forward for this, and we have done a lot of that. But yes, the one of the example which Chhattisgarh government did is Padhai Tware Dwar. So in the panchayat, the teachers have gone digitally, on the loudspeaker and talking about the studies. But the biggest demographic is, if at all we don't have an optical fiber reaching to all the villages, this gap of this gap will be there. So I feel so unless until the low cost access across the demographic is not there, digitally we cannot make all the students aware, and this divide will continue. Talking about the access to the tech, the government has to really come forward, and it is coming forward, as our PM already has said, that optical connectivity from Lakshadweep to Andaman, it will be there, and if it is going to happen in that way, this digital will reach to all the places. Example, I just would like to quote example like a hole in the wall. So it was, if at all you make this thing accessible to the students, so that every student will be able to take up. If at all, it's only, I think in NEP, they talked about the research also. It is not only about reaching the ICT, it is about the research, how effectively it will be used by our students, by our teachers. Then there was a chance of equity where the ICT will be also coming to a picture. And in national education policy, we are talking about national educational technology. We'll have a platform where the lot of exchange of ideas will happen amongst the teachers, among the students across the demographic disparities too. So these all things, if at all the technology is not at a low cost accessible to all, this divide will continue. And with this, we can come to a place where the quality education is accessible to all the societal inequalities, demographic inequalities. So in this way, we can move forward and bringing the technology in the school. The even the community, I feel so the community has to play a great role in this, working with the community. The government should work with the community, the school should work with the community, where the access of internet should be there. And we have to expand access at the school itself, bring your own device, or anywhere they can use internet for their the learning process should happen.
Right.
And we have to adjust our resources and assignment too, where something can go offline also, where every time you don't need online. So if at all we take care of all these things, and few things have been taken care in the national education policy too. So I think this divide we can definitely, lessen down.
Yes, thank you so much, Priyanka ji. I think one very important point which you've driven is lowering the cost of access to technology, which is a big barrier. And here, it's not only on the education fraternity, but the telecom industry, the government, the optical fiber policies. And yes, till the time we all come together, ensuring the access to the last mile would not be possible. So that is a very valid point you've brought about. Let me turn to Mr. Shiladitya Ghosh. And sir, I would like to bring you into the discussion. Of course, your comments on the overall aspect of leveraging of digital infrastructure and the NEP objectives. Also, I would like to pose probably a counter question that are we all getting too excited with the usage of ICT, and are we overestimating the transformative power of ICT? And once the COVID pandemic leaves us, do you see that we would pretty much come back to our old ways, or do you think the situation would change for a more permanent basis? Your thoughts, sir. Mr. Ghosh. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you, Siddharth, and good afternoon, all of you. I think it's a time for huge amount of changes that we can plan for and also welcome. Okay, and the change will be in every aspect of education that we have been following so far. And the first level of change has to be in technology. That technology has to reach out to every nook and corner of this country. There's no doubt about that. Because technology, while it may be difficult to access, like when Priyanka was saying, I was thinking, if we can, is technology as important as food? If governments are giving 2 rupees a kilo of rice, then can the government also provide data at such a low cost? If that can happen, I think it will become absolutely transformational in terms of what Indian teachers can do. Okay, it is the teachers who have to lead it from the front. I'm like, they are the ones who have been, even now, they are the ones who are leading it from the front, who are actually, in spite of, you might have heard of teachers using all kinds of ways to reach out to their students. That's something which is unheard of before. So therefore, there is no going back. Teachers have discovered multiple ways of teaching through technology and harnessing this power of technology to reach out to more and more students. Okay, so therefore it will obviously, those people will be ahead who have embraced technology to keep themselves ahead. So to your question, will they be going back or not, will purely depend on the leadership of the education institutions, how they want to look at it. Do they want to go ahead and muster the entire strength of the institution to be able to stay ahead? And that's the challenge. Do we have that kind of leadership in the education system? And I think the NEP is trying to address that. There are two things that NEP has admitted. One, it says very clearly that there is a learning crisis. I don't think any of the education policies in the past has admitted it in their official document saying that there's a learning crisis. That's number one. Number two is that the NEP is also for the first time establishing an organization called National Professional Standards for Teachers, NPST, which is going to set the kind of teaching quality and teaching training that is going to happen so that we can create a pool of teachers who are upgraded from time to time, right? And there is a time boundness to this, that by 2030, there is a time bound in the sense like these standards will be revised every 5 years. So which means that clearly two areas of problem has been identified. One is, of course, literacy and numeracy, which every year you see ESSER reports coming out and you see ESSER reports coming out and you see that the learning levels are not going up. And the second thing is that there has to be a focus on teacher development, teacher education, which was missing so far. And I hope that there are independent, and as Professor Bhaskar said, that there has to be a body of independent academicians managing this. Okay, they are the ones who will probably be able to spearhead the change that is required in the teacher education policies and so on and so forth. And finally, I think it's important for all institutions, either government or private institutions, to, in the short term, figure out what are the different ways in which we can help our students. And like, I know of villages in Maharashtra, in fact in Bengal, where they have used the village notice board to share different kinds of resources with the children, because you can't gather together, you can't come to school. So if you're moving around, you have this place. The Delhi government has worked with Career Launcher to set a platform where they're giving coaching to class 12 students, and the platform is called CLEF, Career Launcher Education Foundation Project Aspiration, and under which I was just reading about it, that they are trying to reach out to all students of class 12. So technology is the key. And if technology is the key, then you just have to find people who will take it to that extent where we are reaching out to every student. We are not talking about elite schools in India, because they will anyway do it. Okay, their existence depends on them functioning the way they function. But we're talking about how can we leverage the technological advancement that India has made to provide this basic need, which is education. It is as important as food. Yes. There's no denying that, right? So that's where I would rest my point.
No, wonderful, and that's a very powerful thought coming in from this panel, that can we now really look at connectivity as one of the basic needs and also the responsibility of the entire society to ensure that connectivity reaches even the underprivileged sections of the society. Let me quickly get Kalpana ji on the discussion. So Kalpana ji, you can you tell us what has been going on at the DPS school and how has the school how has the school been adapting to the changes which have come? And also one specific aspect of NEP is this entire multidisciplinary approach even at the school level. So do you think career counseling will become all the more important when the student will be faced with so many options and choices? So somebody has to take up that job formally to counsel the student on what is the best career option for him or her. So your thoughts on these 2 points, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. And first of all, I would like to convey my regards to all the respected panelists, respected Keshri Lal sir, Professor Bharat Bhaskar, Shiladitya Ghosh sir and respected Priyanka Tripathi ma'am. And I'm just unfortunate one who have missed out some of the valuable words of the previous panelists. I have, due to this network issue only, I have joined the session very late. So first of all, I'm sorry. And I'm really misfortune that I have missed out the valuable words. As Sir Siddharth asked me that how the things are going on in DPS Champa. So let me tell you that we are operating from a very remote place of Chhattisgarh. The maximum population of this place is belong to tribal areas, and the people, those who are migrated from some other states and some other places, they are also not much aware of the education. Like I was very impressed with Ghosh sir's thought that he said one word in that government is providing 2 rupees per kg rice. Can they provide data also so cheaply? But I should say that some of the maximum lot of parents, they are just thinking of कि 1 साल बच्चा नहीं पढ़ेगा तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बच्चा सेफ रहना चाहिए. But yes, I highly object this. 1 साल 1 दिन बच्चा अगर नहीं खाएगा तो can that child survive? Definitely no. That child cannot survive. So in the same way, if the education, the food for soul, the food for mind, the thought, if the child is not receiving, the child cannot survive. So education is equally important, but the most challenging thing during this pandemic time for me as well as my team was parents are not ready to understand the value of the online classes. They are just saying, "ये क्या नौटंकी लगा रखी है? ये क्या नाटक चल रहा है?" So it was, a big challenge for my team. Instead of teaching them to counsel the parent was the very much challenging task for my team. And I salute my team as well as all the educators, those who are associated with the education. Overnight, how they transformed themselves, how they took up this challenge, how they overcome all the hurdles, and they become overnight, they become digitally literate. They, as sir said, the teachers are now trying multiple methods to reach to the students, but they are not leaving them without education. So in DPS, since we are operating from a very small place, very remote area, so the highly challenging thing was first to counsel the parents that yes, we are conducting the online classes for the benefit of your children. You have to cooperate. Please support us. Please provide them. No, ma'am, my child plays the games on mobile, but my data will be exhausted if he will be online class. He will be attending the online classes. So most of the time, father goes to office and mother is alone at the home and she is illiterate. So how to, mother cannot support the child. Even the child is in 8th standard, mother cannot support at all. So the child is sitting alone and making the teachers also fool and the parent also. Child was on some other side. He just keeps the audio and video muted, and teachers are just in a perception that yes, child was present in my class, and they submit the attendance to me, they are assessing, but the child was not responding. And suddenly other children, they write in the chat box and they send the message that ma'am is asking something to you, please come back on the class. So this is what all things were happening. But yes, slowly and gradually, this scenario I'm talking about, it was from 1st April to 15th, it was continued. Then we started taking these separate online PTMs. One-to-one interaction we have done. We tried to counsel the parents that we don't know when this, till when this time is going to stretch. So education is equally important. Please be sincere about that. Then thank God, finally they understood that and they started supporting us. They started supporting the classes. They were ready to provide the new smartphones to the children. They arranged the data for online classes, and the classes were smoothly going on throughout the April. And again, we resumed the classes since 15 June onward. Until now, they are going on. And you will be, means the most important fact about these classes is now we are getting more than 95% attendance in our online classes. That is very, very satisfactory figure for all of us, for me as the principal as well as for my teachers. And all the parents are highly satisfied with the efforts of the teacher. And they started praising also. That is a big thing. Coming on to the next thing that you mentioned, like NEP offers the freedom of choosing the subjects at secondary and senior secondary level. So now the students have the choice and they will become more aware about their career choices. So yes, for that, the most important thing is now this is the high time as per the CBSE guideline, having the counselor, a professional counselor was by laws, it was mandatory for all the educational institutions, but now this has become more important. In today's scenario, this is the need of the hour that due to the implementation of NEP and the changing scenario, now it has become more important that every institution should appoint a highly qualified professional counselor. And we should organize, time to time, we should organize many career counseling sessions to make them aware about the changing scenario, of course, about the NEP. I myself have conducted one session with my parents of senior secondary classes, so that parents may be aware that now what all career options are open for the students and what the changes are happening in the education system.
Right.
So,
right.
Yes. I will conclude my thoughts with that this is the need of our, that we should motivate all of us, each other, and definitely the teachers, because we don't have words to express their dedication, the hard work, the toil they have taken during this time. And they have proved that why the teachers are compared, even the teachers are before the God. So thank you so much, Siddharth.
Yes. No, thank you so
Definitely,
much.
I have missed out. I don't have much to say.
No, you've brought in very valid points, and specifically on the role of parents in today's time to ensure that the learners are all engaged and continuity is maintained. And you've also brought about rightly some very ground level and real time challenges which all of us probably have faced in the last few months. We have just about enough time to get one last comment on specific topics from everyone. So I will probably ask for a quick remark on one particular aspect of NEP from all of you, and you can give your quick remark or a response on that. तो मैं केशरी जी के पास वापस पहुंचता हूं, और केशरी जी आपसे ये सर पूछना चाहेंगे कि जो GER का एक बड़ा टारगेट गवर्नमेंट ने लिया है, और खासकर छत्तीसगढ़ के परिप्रेक्ष्य में GER नेशनल एवरेज से भी कम है, तो GER बढ़ाने के लिए छत्तीसगढ़ के परिप्रेक्ष्य में क्या कदम उठाने चाहिए आपके हिसाब से? आपके सजेशंस इस पे क्या होंगे सर? सर अनम्यूट कर लीजिए प्लीज।
ग्रास इनरोलमेंट रेशियो जो हमारा 18% के आसपास है, उसके कुछ दो कारण भी हैं। कुछ जो हमारे स्टूडेंट रेगुलर नहीं रहते उनकी गिनती नहीं हो पाती थी बात। दूसरी बात यह है कि हमारा जो स्टेट है उसमें जो रिजर्वेशन पॉलिसी है, हम 32% एसटी लेते हैं, 12% एससी को लेते हैं और 14% ओबीसी को लेते हैं। ये हमारे लिए एक कंपलसरी है, हमको उसको फॉलो करना है। इसका मतलब है कि हमें 1/3 एसटी को हायर एजुकेशन में लाना होगा। पूरे पॉपुलेशन में जो भी 12 से पास होकर निकल रहे हैं बच्चे, उनमें हमारी जो भी सीटें हैं उसमें से 1/3। जो दूर दराज के एरिया हैं उसमें कॉलेजेस लगातार गवर्नमेंट खोली जा रही है और प्रयास ये किया जा रहा है कि वो हायर एजुकेशन में आए। समस्या नीचे भी है कि स्कूली एजुकेशन में कितने आते हैं तब वो हायर एजुकेशन में आएंगे, इसलिए हमें इसे कंप्लीट देखना होगा। जैसे अभी मैं बीच में कह रहा था कि क्वालिटी एजुकेशन, जब तक स्कूली एजुकेशन में क्वालिटी नहीं आएगी तब तक हम अपेक्षा नहीं कर सकते कि हायर एजुकेशन में अचानक हम उसमें क्वालिटी ले आएंगे। कहीं ना कहीं हमारा ध्यान स्कूली एजुकेशन पे रहना चाहिए। इसी प्रकार GER में भी हमारा ध्यान 100% का हाई स्कूल एजुकेशन में आगे जाके हमको करना होगा। वो ऐसा प्रयास करना होगा कि हमारे स्कूल्स, हमारे यूनिवर्सिटीज अप्रोच में हों लोगों को, और उन्हें हम किसी तरह, जैसे स्कूली एजुकेशन में करते हैं कि ड्रॉप आउट कम हो, रीजनल लैंग्वेज में, लोकल लैंग्वेज में पढ़ाएं। ये भी बातें आ रही ताकि वो कम से कम आए, पढ़ें, उनका मन लगे, स्कूल छोड़ के ना जाएं। ये प्रारंभिक स्थिति, वहाँ से उनका एजुकेशन शुरू होगा। उसको अट्रैक्ट करना होगा, उनको बच्चों को अट्रैक्ट ऐसा करना होगा कि लगे, उनका मन लगे स्कूल में आने का और पढ़ें। तो एक बार मन लगेगा, धीरे धीरे वे आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे और वो हायर एजुकेशन तक आएंगे। जब नीचे ही कम रहेंगे तो हायर एजुकेशन में अपेक्षा। हायर एजुकेशन की संस्थाएं लगातार बढ़ रही है, लेकिन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, जो फैकल्टी है, उसमें भी हमको बहुत ध्यान देने की जरूरत है। क्योंकि सरकार प्रयास करती है, PSC में देखिए 600-700 पद अभी खाली हैं, उसका विज्ञापन निकला है लेकिन अभी नहीं पाया। और हम ये चाहते हैं कि जो एजुकेशन एक शहर रायपुर में मिले, UTD हमारे रविशंकर में मिले, वही देवभोग में भी मिले, वही भटगांव बिलाईगढ़ में भी मिले, बराबर बच्चों में हम कोई अंतर नहीं कर सकते। किसी को हम उस स्तर से ले आने में या उसको उस ज्ञान से डिप्राइव नहीं कर सकते। इसलिए जरूरी है कि इसमें योगदान सबसे बड़ा इसलिए राज्य शासन का होता है। केंद्र सरकार ने जो कुछ भी योजनाएं बनाई, इम्प्लीमेंट करना होगा राज्य में। दूसरी बात यह है कि बहुत सारे हमारे प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं। ये भी कहा जा रहा है कि बाद में मर्ज करके 3000 अगर स्टूडेंट्स हो जाते हैं तो उनमें मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी एजुकेशन के सिस्टम करें। हमने कुछ प्रयोग किए हैं, उसका एक मैं उदाहरण बताता हूँ कि हमारा बेसिक साइंस में 5 ईयर इंटीग्रेटेड कोर्स चलाया। उसकी क्वालिटी इतनी हाई है कि 2000 अप्लाई करते होंगे, 40 बच्चों का हम सेलेक्ट करते हैं और हर बच्चे को हर साल 5 साल तक 5000 रुपये, 5000 रुपीज पर मंथ हम देते हैं, सहायता करते हैं। और वो बच्चे जो निकल रहे हैं, अभी तुम्हें समय नहीं है, एक एक बच्चे का मैं बता देता कि राष्ट्रीय और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर में उनके पेपर छप रहे हैं, जैसे बहुत सीनियर प्रोफेसरों के पेपर नहीं छप सकते। वो 3-5 साल का कोर्स PG नहीं कर रहे थे, 3 साल में नेट पास कर लेते हैं। क्वालिटी है, क्वालिटी कैसे होता है इसका बता रहा हूँ, हम प्रयोग करते हैं। ये भी हमारे यहाँ चल रहा है। जैसा कि मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी की बात है, वह भी हम आधे अधूरे लगा कर रहे हैं। UTD में हमारे यहाँ ये सुविधा पहले से है, क्योंकि अगर फिजिक्स केमिस्ट्री का MSc का स्टूडेंट है, वह हिंदी या फिलॉसफी पढ़ सकता है। चॉइस बेस्ड क्रेडिट सिस्टम हमारे यहाँ लागू है, लेकिन हम उसको केवल UTD में लागू किए। हमको सभी महाविद्यालय में लागू करना होगा। जो सरकार की मंशा है कि वो अन्य सब्जेक्ट की भी पढ़ाई कर सके, हमने अपनी UTD में कर रखा है। हमारा हिंदी का विद्यार्थी फार्मेसी पढ़ता है, फिलोसफी का विद्यार्थी फिजिक्स पढ़ता है हमारे यहाँ सुविधा है।
राइट।
एक बात और थी बीएड की क्वालिटी कैसे करें, इसमें कैसे बच्चे आएंगे इसको बढ़ाने के लिए क्या। बीएड के हमने 5 ईयर्स का हमने ऑर्डिनेंस बना लिया, हम अपने आप लागू कर रहे हैं, जबकि अभी तो नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में होगी कह रहे हैं, हमारे यहाँ तो लागू कर रहे हैं इसको पूरी कंपनी, ताकि हम अच्छे टीचर तैयार कर सकें।
ठीक है, राइट सर, राइट सर।
मेरा ये कहना है कि इसमें योगदान प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन जो कॉलेज खोले हुए हैं बहुत सारे हैं क्षेत्र में हैं, उनमें अपनी क्वालिटी बनानी होगी, बच्चों को अट्रैक्ट करना होगा। अदरवाइज केवल डिग्री बांटने से नहीं होगा, उसमें कहीं ना कहीं बच्चों में अट्रैक्शन होगा कि मैं हायर एजुकेशन में जाके मैं कोई अपना कैरियर बना सकता हूँ, जॉब पा सकता हूँ या जॉब दे सकता हूँ, कुछ ऐसा मैं स्वरोजगार पैदा कर सकता हूँ। ये उन्हें अट्रैक्शन करना होगा उनको।
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your remarks. I will quickly take Mr. Ghosh's remark on one aspect. This rise of edtech industry has been spoken about quite a lot, and we also see that a lot of out-of-school learning, is happening through various apps and portals, and we see a lot of advertisements of all those all around. So what do you make of that impact on students? Is it all beneficial, or do you see that to be a little on crossroads with what is being handled within the school?
No, I think there is a exploration. Explosion of companies coming in and saying that this works, that works, and so on and so forth. But I think it is not the edtech companies who are going to run the show. It is the school and the teachers who are going to run the show, and saying that what is required by us, which is going to be helpful in the day-to-day learning of the child. See, learning is not just about technology. Learning, there has to be experience. There has to be hands-on work that the children have to do. There has to be interaction. There has to be interaction with all kinds of people, particularly at the school level, because that's a developmental stage and so on and so forth. Technology will only be a tool to enhance certain learning aspects of the child, of the student. So therefore, you cannot imagine that everything is going to happen online. You cannot imagine everything is now going to happen in school. So there has to be a blend, and a very intelligent and a intelligent blend that every institution has to create for themselves. It is up to the institution to decide how much technology and how much, so, and which grade it's also. I'm like, if you want to bring in technology too much in grade 1, 2, and 3, maybe that will not work. But if you want to bring in technology in 10th, 11th, and 12th, maybe it will work. But then the ratio, the proportion in which we are doing that is a very critical factor in bringing edtech into school education. You cannot keep it aside. You cannot deny it, but that's the most important. The balance and the ratio is the most important part of this.
Yes. Right. So the blended approach and finding that right balance, that's the secret sauce, we're all looking for. Quickly, I would like to bring in Priyanka ji on this aspect where.
So that I'll take your leave because I've got a next meeting at 3:40. So
sure.
I was very happy to be a part of this panel, and I hope this debate continues, and all the best to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting.
So I'll just take the last comments from Priyanka ji. Priyanka ji, your thoughts quickly on vocational education right from 6th standard onwards. That is one big change and one big introduction in NEP. Your thoughts on that?
So I hope So rightly said, Siddharth, because there's a lot of changes in NEP regarding the vocational courses, and we have been introducing right from class 9th, grade 9. Like if you can say artificial intelligence or coding or ICT, IT, they all have been introduced in class 9th, and students have a choice to opt for it. Entrepreneurship. So these are the courses you have never heard much beforehand in the school education, but now it is there, because these are the things which are going to make them future ready students, because the skill based learning are so important. The factor which always is said that they're not being employable because they're not they're lacking these kind of skills, so they have not been exposed to those kind of skills in the school time. So now with this vocational courses coming in, so I believe there will be a lot of skill based learning happening, and we may making the students future ready students for 21st century skills students. So I hope this vocational is going to really add on to the students' learning. Thank you.
Right. And finally, Kalpana ji, I would like to get your views on this entire aspect of course, the hands-on learning, जो NEP में बोला जा रहा है बार-बार, and also the vocational education introduction from 6th standard onwards. So the same topic, what are your takes on it?
Thank you, Siddharth. In my opinion, as always, the educators include that the education should be skill-based, the education should be skill-based. Earlier, it was only in the thoughts. The educational institutions were not having any proper guidelines from the government, from the board, and they all were doing it, definitely they all were doing it on their part as per their own choice and as per their own wish. But now NEP has included it, so the vocational education is right from 6th standard onward, and it has to be included in the curriculum also. So now all the schools have a definite path to go on. And now they will think sincerely about the teachers training on this part. Definitely the trained teacher is the most valuable asset of the school, who is going to deliver whatever the leader is planning or the curriculum. So now the schools will also sincerely think that how the teachers will be trained so that they can deliver it as per the desired way, and the students will grasp it. And I'm so happy with that 10 days training. When I just read about that, it was so good. And now definitely I'm hoping that this will bring a revolutionary change in the children. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to an end of a very exciting session. And although we started with the digital and socio-economic divide, but we covered very, very important and pertinent aspects of NEP on hands-on learning, on the role of parents in the entire system, the multidisciplinary approach, career counseling, the use of EdTech, and finally the blended approach for learning for the state of Chhattisgarh and the entire education fraternity on the whole. So I thank all the panelists for your valuable insights and comments. I'm sure many of us would be going back with a lot of takeaways on the best practices you have shared, and looking forward to engaging with all of you on a continued basis. So we will stop our session here and over to ELET's team for taking it ahead. Yes.
I just want 10 seconds. I want that now many educators of different levels of education are here. Even the ELETs is also there, which have provided us this wonderful platform to interact with each other. So from this platform, I would like to salute all these second line Corona warriors. These are teachers who are creating the future Corona warriors. और ईश्वर से यही प्रार्थना है कि भविष्य में ऐसा कोई पेंडेमिक हमारे देश में दुनिया में ना आए. But yes, we are the ones who have nurtured the children in that way that in future they will become the warriors whenever any such kind of calamity, such type of pandemic will come into the world. So I wish that all of the members of this meeting, please stand up and clap in the honor of the second line Corona warriors, the educators. Please do it for myself. Stand up everyone and please clap for the second line Corona warriors.
Right. Thank you so much, Kalpana ji. We are all waiting for the good news to come out on the vaccine, and hopefully we should get it soon. Thank you, Keshri Lal sir, Vice Chancellor sir. Thank you, Priyanka ji. Thank you, Shiladitya ji, and thank you, Professor Bhaskar from IIM Raipur. Over to you, Abhishek.